So the coach tells you need to throw more strikes. The parents are yelling, come on, just play catch with the catcher. And your buddies are getting real frustrated behind you. And you don't know what to do. Let me tell you 3 different things that you can do in game, in the middle of the game, that can help you throw more strikes. Number 1, and actually I lied. The third one, you're gonna have to do in addition to the games. So you can do it in games, but it's gonna have to be something you do also outside of. And all of these you should. But number 1 is something that I wish I would have been told when I played. I never heard this, but now I've heard it apparently all the time. Apparently everybody knows about aim small, miss small. What does that mean? It means you find the smallest target your itty bitty little eyes can see, and that becomes your target. So it doesn't, for me, it was, try to hit the glove. And you know what I did when someone said try to hit the glove? I looked at the catcher as a whole. You can look at the catcher where your focus is just the catcher, or maybe I'd look at their mask and see kind of what their facial expressions were, or maybe I'd look at their gloves sometimes, and I would look away, and then I'd pick up at the last second, so I wasn't even focusing on the target, but my general place to hit was the catcher. That's not a very small target. It's a pretty big target. They talk about aim small, miss small, because if I miss small or big from a big target, so if I miss by an inch or 2, or I miss by an inch, 1 or 2 feet, all of those are balls, because a catcher tends to be wider than the plate. And even if they're not, if you miss a catcher, the whole catcher by a couple inches, that's way outside. Now that's a ball. So if you aim small and you miss small, sometimes you can't do anything about missing big or small, but if you aim small and you miss, that can still be a strike. You aim small and you miss, that can still be a strike. Again, you aim big, and you miss any, that tends to be a ball. So find a target. I mean, not even the glove. If you can see some of the webbing or some of the words and the letters, find the smallest thing you can find to focus on, and that's what you focus on. So that's number 1. Number 2 is breathing. All of this definitely has to do with focus. So while you're aiming, you should be focusing, you should be looking at the target. And you can also look at the target longer. Some guys pick it up late or not at all. But then breathing. If you inhale and then exhale longer, you can slow down your heart rate, which can help focus you, which can relax you so you can move more like you're used to. Because if you're really, really nervous, I think we've all been there, and your heart rate's going really hot, really fast, it's hard to move and feel comfortable because you're not used to moving at that type of intensity. I'll actually have guys in the bullpen do 5 or 10 push-ups or a quick sprint and then pitch to simulate sometimes when they're out of breath in a game. Because there's sometimes it's gonna take you at least a couple pitches if you're really good with your breathing. So that might be something you need to train in your bullpens where, again, you do a quick sprint, you come back and you try to execute a pitch because your heart rate comes up. Now you've trained and performed like you will in a game. You always hear, practice how you play. Well, there's some things that you can do to simulate that. Also, do try to work on your breathing. Try to inhale and then exhale for twice the amount of time. So if you inhale for 2 seconds, try to exhale for 4. And then push it. So I've done this over many, many years, trained a lot of people on how to breathe, so I can inhale and then exhale for a really long time. You get the point. Also, through breathing, your rib cage starts to contract and get closer to your spine. The muscles they end up contracting and get tighter, and you can actually create more stability in your body and in your spine. So when you rotate, you'll hear some guys grunt sometimes, or they'll breathe. When they exercise, they're exhaling. What that does is create more stability. And if you have more stability when you release and the arm comes out, then you can tend to have more control. So through breathing, which focuses you, which relaxes you, which slows down your heart rate and gives you more comfort, you can also get more control just from having more stability in your body through exhaling during the breath. So that's always a good thing too. So you can take care of your breathing, and then we talked about your focus and aim small, miss small. So aim small, miss small, breathing, and then lastly is going to be repetitions. So repetitions is definitely something you gotta do in practice, but also when you're in a game, I would recommend that if you're trying to adjust Don't do it one pitch, the next pitch, the next pitch, the next pitch. Because you might have an entire inning where you've tried 15 different things and you have no idea what worked. Give yourself a couple pitches. Now, if someone recommends otherwise, that's fine. But I have found with most athletes who we're trying to tell them already to simplify things, if you're going to work and you're trying to get a guy out and you need to know what to do, you're going to have to try something different after a few pitches. But within that, and it's not some easy blanket statement where there's always what you do, because you might see one guy and it's your last pitch and you have to make an adjustment. You might see another guy who's a completely different hitter and you're trying to make another pitch. So there's going to be a lot of different adjustments. But if you can, try to adjust something here first. And let's start here. So what's my focus like? What's my breathing like? What's my routine like? What am I saying in my head? So all this stuff we're going to try and fix first before I ever try and think of, I'm going to try and fix where my hand is or my mechanics or something that's a little more dynamic. Let's start simpler. So up here, what am I saying to myself? What am I thinking about? How is my focus? How is my sight? How is my breathing? And just doing that over and over and over, doing it in your bullpens, trying to simulate those things, like I said, with the breathing, always a really good idea. And then, especially for the youth athletes, and this isn't just young bucks, this is also high school, middle school, and even college guys. There are dudes at so many different levels that pitch on a Friday and may not pitch off of a mound for another 5 days, 10 days, 3 weeks, depending on a ton of different factors. And then the coach puts that player in, and everyone involved, the parents, the players, the coaches, the teammates, everyone expects you to do well, and you expect yourself to do well too. Well, that's a big mistake on everyone's part. If you're not on the mound, and if no one else is doing it for you, you got to take your own career into your hands, and you got to figure out how to get yourself on the mound. Because if you're not getting the repetitions of just throwing fastballs to a target, let alone all the stuff we're talking about right now, if you're not getting the repetitions in practice, then how in the world are you going to expect to be able to go out on the mound and perform in a game when you haven't been practicing it? I see this way too often where guys go out there, don't do well, they're frustrated, the coach is frustrated, they don't get another opportunity maybe for a couple more weeks because they didn't perform well, and it's just a vicious cycle that repeats itself. But a lot of the times, guys just need to be on the mound, especially because there's so many variables with the mound. So they got to get comfortable with some kind of mound, hopefully a couple different kinds of mounds, to be able to go out there and perform and do. You wouldn't ask anybody else in the world doing anything to not do it for weeks and weeks on end and then expect to perform at the highest levels. The only time that kind of works is for big competitions, let's say for a track runner, a sprinter. They might sprint, do all this type of training, and then they might take a day or a couple days or a week or however long it is, because I don't know sprinter training as much, but they might take some time off from that sprinting to let their body recover and be in peak performance and peak tip-top form in order to go and execute on their sprinting. That could be something of an example. But they're not going to take weeks and weeks off, and that sometimes legitimately happens. I'm sure you've seen it, and we need to get rid of that. So, take care of all of those. Aim small, miss small, breathing, and repetitions.